The warning. The message arrived on a cold Tuesday morning in March 2157. Every communication device on Earth screamed to life simultaneously, from the massive orbital arrays to the simple wrist computers worn by farmers in remote villages. The UA transmission bypassed every security protocol, every firewall, every defensive measure humanity had ever conceived. Commander Jake Morrison stood in the Earth Defense Command Center, watching as holographic displays flickered with alien symbols. The translation algorithms worked frantically, converting the foreign language into something humans could understand. Around him, technicians scrambled at their stations while Admiral Kate Williams barked orders from the central platform. "Sir, translation is coming through now," reported Lieutenant Tom Bradley, his voice tight with tension. The young officer had seen action in the Mars colonies, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The alien voice that emerged from the speakers was cold, mechanical, utterly without emotion. It spoke in perfect English, though the words carried an otherworldly accent that made everyone's skin crawl. "People of Earth," the voice began, "we are the Dominion of the Void. For 3,000 years we have watched your species spread across your small system like a disease. We have observed your wars, your destruction of planets, your endless hunger for resources." Morrison exchanged glances with Williams. Both had spent decades preparing for first contact, but not like this. The Admiral's weathered face showed no motion, though her knuckles were white as she gripped the command rail. "Your expansion ends now," the voice continued. "You have 7 of your days to surrender unconditionally, dismantle your fleets, destroy your weapons, submit to our rule, and some of you may be permitted to live as servants in our empire." The transmission paused, and in that silence, Morrison could hear his own heartbeat. Around the command center, hundreds of the Earth's best military minds waited for what came next. "If you refuse, we will demonstrate why 47 civilizations before you chose wisdom over destruction. Your sun will become our weapon. Your worlds will burn. Your species will become a footnote in galactic history." Static filled the air as the transmission ended. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. Then the chaos began. Officers shouted reports about fleet positions, defensive networks, evacuation protocols. The great machinery of human civilization shifted into overdrive. But Morrison wasn't listening to the panic around him. He was thinking about his daughter Lisa, safe in the underground cities of Europa. He was thinking about his brother Mike, commanding a patrol ship near Titan. He was thinking about the millions of humans scattered across dozens of worlds, all now under threat of extinction. Admiral Williams called for silence, her voice cutting through the noise like a laser. "Get me President Adams on the secure line," she ordered, "and patch me through to Fleet Command, Mars Defense Grid, and the Outer Colony administrators." As the communication links established, Morrison found himself staring at the star charts. On the main display, red dots marked known Dominion positions, massive ships lurking just beyond Pluto's orbit. The aliens had been watching, waiting, preparing. Humanity had been living under a sword that could fall at any moment. "Admiral," came President Adams's voice through the speakers, "I assume you've all heard the message. What's our status?" Williams took a deep breath. "Mr. President, we have approximately 1,500 active ships across all fleets. The Mars Defense Grid is operational, and the colony shields are charging to maximum power. But sir, based on our sensor readings, they have at least 50 vessels, each one the size of a city." The president was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of a species' survival. "Admiral, in your professional opinion, what are our chances if we fight?" Morrison watched Williams struggle with the answer. She was a soldier, trained to find solutions in impossible situations. But the mathematics were brutal. Humanity's most advanced warships were barely 2 kilometers long. The Dominion vessels measured over 20 kilometers each. "Sir," Williams finally replied, "conventional analysis suggests our chances are minimal." "I see." The president paused again. "And if we surrender?" "Unknown, sir. But historically, species that surrender to overwhelming force don't fare well." Morrison stepped forward. Mr. President, if I may, we've faced impossible odds before. At Thermopylae, at Britain during the Blitz, at the siege of Stalingrad. Humanity doesn't have a good track record of going quietly. The command center fell silent. Everyone knew what Morrison was really saying. They all knew what humanity's answer would be. President Adams's voice came through clear and strong. Admiral Williams, begin preparations for total war. The revelation. 3 days after the ultimatum, Dr. Emma Clark made a discovery that changed everything. Deep in the research tunnels beneath Geneva, surrounded by quantum computers and experimental physics equipment, she stared at readings that shouldn't have been possible. "Run the scan again," she told her assistant, Dr. Mark Stevens. The man looked exhausted. They'd been working non-stop since the alien message arrived, trying to understand Dominion technology from long-range sensor data. The results came back identical. Clark sat back in her chair, mind racing. Around her, the underground laboratory hummed with activity, as Earth's greatest scientists worked desperately to find some advantage, some weakness in their enemy's defenses. "Mark, get Admiral Williams on the secure line. Now." Minutes later, Williams's face appeared on the holographic display, her expression grim. Behind her, Clark could see the controlled chaos of the command center. "Doctor, please tell me you have good news," Williams said. Clark took a deep breath. "Admiral, I need to show you something. The Dominion ships, they're not what we thought they were." She transmitted her data to the command center, watching Williams' face as the information appeared on her displays. The Admiral's eyes widened. As she studied the quantum signatures, the energy patterns, the impossible readings that Clark had discovered. "What am I looking at, Doctor?" "Those ships, Admiral. They're not ships at all, they're constructs. Artificial realities generated by massive quantum processors. The Dominion isn't using advanced materials or exotic energy sources. They're using pure mathematics to create the illusion of overwhelming force." Williams leaned forward. "Are you saying they're fake?" "Not fake exactly. The ships exist. They can fire weapons, they can move through space. But they're not solid matter. They're quantum projections held together by incredibly sophisticated computers. And Admiral, quantum projections have a weakness." Clark pulled up another display showing Earth's defensive network. "Our EMP weapons, our quantum jammers, we designed them to disrupt enemy electronics. But what if the enemy ships are electronics?" The implications hit Williams immediately. Clark could see it in her eyes, the sudden shift from despair to possibility. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment, processing the information. "How certain are you about this?" Williams asked finally. 97%. I've run the analysis 40 times. "Admiral, I think the Dominion has been using this same trick for millennia. They arrive, they project massive fleets, they demand surrender. Most species give up without a fight." Williams nodded slowly. "But if a species did fight back with the right weapons, the entire fleet would collapse like a house of cards." The Admiral was already turning to her staff, barking orders. "Get me Commander Morrison, and patch me through to Dr. Alan Foster at the Mars Technical Institute. We need to retrofit every EMP device in the fleet, and we need to do it in 4 days." As the communication ended, Clark felt a mixture of hope and terror. Hope, because humanity might actually have a chance. Terror, because she could be wrong. If her analysis was incorrect, Earth's modified weapons would be useless against real alien technology. Her wrist computer chimed with an incoming message from her brother Dave, stationed aboard the heavy cruiser Defiance. Like thousands of other military families, they'd been saying what might be their final goodbyes. "Emma," his message read, "heard through the grapevine that you might have found something. Can't say much on this channel, but wanted you to know. Whatever you discovered, we trust you. The whole fleet trusts you. Give us the tools, and we'll finish the job." Clark stared at the message, feeling the weight of an entire species' hopes resting on her shoulders. Around her, other scientists continued their work, developing new weapons, improving defensive systems, preparing for humanity's greatest battle. Dr. Stevens appeared at her shoulder. "Emma, I just received word from the orbital factories. They're beginning production of the modified EMP warheads. Estimated completion time, 72 hours. 3 days. 3 days to build enough weapons to test her theory. 3 days to discover if humanity had found its salvation, or merely false hope. Clark turned back to her computers, pulling up the quantum analysis one more time. The mathematics were elegant, beautiful even. The Dominion had created what appeared to be an unstoppable force using nothing but advanced computing and clever physics. But mathematics could be countered with mathematics. Illusions could be shattered with truth. She began composing a message to every research station in the solar system. If her theory was correct, they would need every quantum physicist, every computer scientist, every mathematician they could find. The war for humanity's survival would be fought not with plasma cannons and nuclear missiles, but with equations and algorithms. The preparation, the asteroid belt, became humanity's forge. For 4 days and nights, mining ships transformed into weapons factories, while transport vessels carried supplies between planets. Every human settlement, from Mercury's solar collectors to Neptune's ice mines, contributed to the war effort. Commander, Alex Reed stood on the bridge of the battleship Titan's Hammer, watching as the last of the modified EMP torpedoes loaded into his ship's weapons bays. Around him, the largest human fleet ever assembled prepared for battle. Over 2,000 vessels of every size and type floated in formation. Military ships, civilian transports retrofitted with weapons, even mining barges carrying experimental quantum jammers. "Sir, receiving final confirmation from Fleet Command," reported Captain Lisa Park, Reed's tactical officer. The young woman had been promoted 3 times in the last week as the fleet expanded beyond all previous organizational structures. "All ships report ready for deployment," Reed nodded, studying the tactical display. The Dominion fleet hung motionless beyond Pluto, 50 massive vessels arranged in perfect formation. Long-range sensors showed no movement, no preparation for battle. The aliens seemed supremely confident in their superiority. Captain Park signaled the fleet. All ships advanced to assault positions. As the human armada began moving toward the outer system, Reed opened a communication channel to Dr. Clark, still working frantically in her Geneva laboratory. "Doctor, this is Commander Reed. We're beginning our approach. Any last-minute updates on your analysis?" Clark's face appeared on the display, her features drawn with exhaustion but her eyes bright with determination. "Commander, I've run every HFY simulation I can think of. The theory is sound. Those ships are quantum constructs, sophisticated ones, but constructs nonetheless. Your EMP weapons should disrupt their projection matrices." "Should?" Reed raised an eyebrow. "Commander, we're dealing with technology thousands of years beyond ours. There could be variables I haven't considered, but the mathematical foundations are clear. If I'm right, their entire fleet will collapse when you hit them with coordinated quantum disruption." Reed appreciated her honesty. "And if you're wrong?" Clark was quiet for a moment. "If I'm wrong, Commander, we'll discover it very quickly." The communication ended, and Reed turned his attention back to the approaching battle. Around him, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. These men and women had trained for years to defend humanity, but none had imagined a scenario quite like this. "Sir," called Lieutenant Ben Taylor from the communications station, "we're receiving a transmission from the Dominion fleet." "Put it through." The alien voice filled the bridge, as cold and mechanical as before. "Human vessels, you approach your destruction. We offered mercy. You chose annihilation. So be it." Reed stepped forward. "This is Commander Alex Reed of the Earth Defense Fleet. We received your message. Here's our reply." He gestured to Captain Park, who activated the fleet-wide communication system. Reed's voice carried to every ship in the human armada. "All ships. This is Fleet Command. Today we fight not just for Earth, but for every world humanity has ever called home. We fight for our children, for our future, for the right to exist in this galaxy. The enemy believes we'll surrender when faced with superior numbers. They're about to learn what happens when you threaten humanity's survival." Across the fleet, weapons powered up. The modified EMP torpedoes armed themselves, their quantum disruption warheads charged and ready. Fighter squadrons launched from carrier ships, their pilots singing old war songs over the communication channels. On the heavy cruiser Liberator, Captain Sarah Cole watched her crew make final preparations. Her brother Jim commanded a destroyer 2 positions to starboard, while her daughter Kate served as a fighter pilot aboard the carrier Victory. 3 generations of her family were about to face the unknown together. "Ma'am," reported her weapons. "Officer, all torpedo tubes loaded with quantum disruption warheads. EMP cannons charged and ready." Cole nodded. "Signal the fleet. Liberator is ready for battle." Similar reports came from ships throughout the formation. The massive dreadnought Solar Fury confirmed readiness, its experimental super EMP cannon powered up for the first time. The fast attack ships Iron Wolf and Star Hunter reported their stealth systems active, ready to probe the enemy's defenses. As the human fleet closed to combat range, Reed made one final communication to Earth. "Admiral Williams, this is Fleet Command. We are engaging the enemy. Whatever happens next, remember that humanity chose to fight." Williams's reply came through clearly. "Understood, Commander. Give them hell." The Dominion ships began moving for the first time since their arrival. Massive forms shifting into battle formation. Weapon ports opened along their hulls, revealing arrays of destructive power that defied human understanding. But Reed was no longer afraid. His species had faced extinction before and survived. Today, they would discover if human ingenuity could triumph over alien arrogance. "All ships," he ordered, "commence attack." The battle. The first salvo lit up the darkness between worlds. 50 Dominion vessels unleashed destruction that tore through space itself, beams of pure energy that could melt asteroids in seconds. The human fleet scattered, smaller ships dancing between the massive energy bursts while larger vessels returned fire. Commander Reed gripped the command rail as the Titan's hammer shuddered under a near miss. Around him, damage reports flooded from across the fleet. The destroyer Morning Star took a direct hit and vaporized instantly. The cruiser New Beijing lost its forward sections, but continued fighting with its remaining weapons. "Sir, we're losing ships faster than anticipated," reported Captain Park, her voice steady despite the chaos. "The enemy weapons are more powerful than our projections." Reed watched the tactical display as red markers disappeared, each one representing hundreds of human lives. But he also noticed something else. The Dominion ships weren't moving with the fluid grace he'd expected from advanced technology. Their movements seemed programmed, predictable. "All ships, this is Fleet Command. Execute pattern Delta 7. Fast attack groups probe their flanks. Heavy ships concentrate fire on their lead vessel." The human fleet reorganized mid-battle, a maneuver that would have been impossible without decades of training. Fighter squadrons from the carrier Victory streaked toward the enemy flanks while the dreadnought Solar Fury charged forward, its massive bulk absorbing punishment meant for smaller ships. "Commander," came Dr. Clark's voice over the communication system, "I'm reading their power signatures. The quantum fluctuations are exactly what I predicted. They're maintaining those ships through pure computational power." Reed felt a surge of hope. "Doctor, are you certain?" "Positive. Commander, if you can get close enough to hit them with the quantum disruption warheads, the effect should cascade through their entire formation." Easier said than done. The Dominion ships formed a defensive wall, their weapons creating a killing field that stretched for thousands of kilometers. Any ship attempting to close range would face concentrated fire from multiple vessels. But humanity had always excelled at solving impossible problems. "Captain Park, signal Captain Cole on the Liberator. Tell her to take the 3rd Squadron and attack from below. I want every ship with stealth capability to begin infiltration runs." Across the battlefield, human ships executed increasingly desperate maneuvers. The fast attack ship Iron Wolf used a destroyed asteroid as cover, emerging behind enemy lines to fire its quantum torpedoes at point-blank range. The mining barge Prosperity, converted into an improvised weapons platform, rammed directly into a Dominion vessel's shield barrier. Captain Cole led her squadron in a sweeping attack from beneath the enemy formation. "All ships, target the largest vessel. Concentrate all firepower on a single point. The modified EMP weapon struck the Dominion flagship simultaneously. For a moment, nothing happened. Then reality began to unravel. The massive alien ship flickered like a broken hologram. Its hull wavered between solid matter and empty space as the quantum disruption spread through its projection matrix. Weapon ports vanished and reappeared randomly. The vessel's perfect symmetry collapsed into geometric chaos. "It's working," Clark's voice carried across all channels. "The projection is destabilizing." But the Dominion wasn't finished. As their flagship began to collapse, the remaining ships increased their firepower dramatically. The space around the human fleet became a storm of destructive energy that overwhelmed shields and melted armor plating. The carrier Victory exploded in a flash of nuclear fire, taking with it 3 squadrons of fighters. The heavy cruiser Defiance lost power and drifted helplessly as enemy beams tore through its hull. Captain Cole's daughter Kate died when her fighter was caught in a cascade failure aboard the burning Victory. Reed felt each loss like a physical blow, but he couldn't allow grief to cloud his judgment. The enemy flagship was still partially functional, its quantum matrix struggling to maintain coherence. If they could deliver enough disruption force, the cascade effect might spread to other ships. All remaining vessels, concentrate everything on the flagship. This is our only chance. The Solar Fury answered the call, pushing forward despite taking massive damage. Its experimental super EMP cannon had never been tested at full power, but Captain David Stone didn't hesitate. All power to the main weapon. Emergency overload authorization. The Dreadnought's massive gun charged beyond safe parameters, drawing power from every system on the ship. Life support failed. Artificial gravity flickered. The hull groaned under stresses it wasn't designed to handle. When the weapon fired, it created a pulse of quantum disruption that swept across the battlefield like a tidal wave. The Dominion flagship didn't just flicker this time. It began dissolving, its quantum matrix completely overwhelmed. And then the cascade began. Ship after ship in the Dominion fleet began losing cohesion as the disruption effect spread through their shared computational network. The perfect alien armada became a collection of failing projections, their mathematical foundations crumbling under humanity's assault. Reed watched in amazement as 50 massive vessels simply ceased to exist. The Victory silence fell across the battlefield. Where 50 Dominion warships had once dominated space, only empty darkness remained. The human fleet floated motionless among the debris of their own vessels, survivors struggling to comprehend what they had witnessed. Commander Reed stood in the damaged bridge of the Titan's hammer, staring at displays that showed no enemy contacts. Around him, his crew worked to restore damaged systems while trying to process the impossible victory they had just achieved. "Sir," Captain Park reported, her voice filled with wonder. "Long-range sensors confirm no remaining Dominion vessels in the system. They're gone. All of them." The communication channels erupted with voices from across the fleet. Captains reported damage, requested assistance, and asked the same question over and over. Was it really over? Reed opened a channel. To Dr. Clark. The physicist appeared on screen, tears streaming down her face as she stared at her own sensor readings from Earth. "Commander," she said, her voice shaking, "the quantum signatures have completely dissipated. The entire Dominion fleet was a projection, the most sophisticated illusion ever created, but still just an illusion. When we disrupted their computational matrix, the whole system collapsed." Across the solar system, humanity began to understand what had happened. The terrible alien armada that had threatened extinction was nothing more than advanced mathematics given form. The Dominion had conquered 47 civilizations not through superior weapons or overwhelming force, but through fear and the illusion of invincibility. But one species had refused to submit. One species had chosen to fight impossible odds, rather than accept slavery. And in fighting, humanity had discovered the truth behind their enemy's power. Admiral Williams's voice came through on the fleet communication system. "All ships, this is Earth Command. Stand down from combat alert. Begin search and rescue operations for survivors." The next hours brought both triumph and tragedy. The human fleet had lost nearly 800 vessels in the battle. Tens of thousands of brave men and women had died fighting an enemy that didn't truly exist. Captain Cole mourned her daughter Kate while helping coordinate rescue operations. Commander Reed walked through his damaged ship, visiting wounded crew members and trying to find words for what they had accomplished. But humanity had survived. More than survived, they had won. As news of the victory spread across Earth's colonies, celebrations erupted from Mars to the outer moons. In the underground cities of Europa, children who had prepared for evacuation instead sang songs of victory. On the mining stations of the asteroid belt, workers who had spent days building weapons now returned to their peaceful tasks. 3 days after the battle, a new transmission reached Earth. But this time, the message came from the Dominion themselves. The voice was different, not the cold, mechanical tone of the invasion fleet, but something almost afraid. "People of Earth," the alien speaker began, "I am Ambassador Vell of the Dominion Council. We wish to speak with your leaders." President Adams, Admiral Williams, and the surviving fleet commanders gathered in the Earth Defense Command Center to hear what their former enemies had to say. "For 3 millennia, the ambassador continued, our fleets have maintained order in this galaxy through the demonstration of superior force. 47 civilizations have chosen wisdom over destruction when faced with our armadas. You are the first species to see through the illusion." Admiral Williams stepped forward. "And now that we've seen through it, what happens next?" There was a long pause before the ambassador replied. "We propose negotiations, an exchange of knowledge. Your species has proven something we thought impossible. Perhaps it is time for the Dominion to learn from others rather than simply ruling them." Reed exchanged glances with Williams. The idea that humanity's greatest enemy might become an ally was almost as shocking as the discovery that their fleet was an illusion. In the months that followed, first contact became something entirely different than anyone had imagined. The Dominion, stripped of their facade of invincibility, revealed themselves to be an ancient civilization that had maintained peace through carefully crafted deception. They had never actually conquered anyone. They had simply convinced other species to surrender without fighting. Humanity became the first species to join the Dominion as equals rather than subjects. Earth scientists worked with alien researchers to develop new technologies, while human military advisors helped reform the Dominion's approach to interstellar relations. And in the quiet moments between diplomatic meetings and scientific conferences, the survivors of the Great Battle remembered those who had died fighting an enemy that existed only in mathematics and fear. They had given their lives to prove that humanity would never kneel, never surrender, never accept defeat as long as hope remained. It was perhaps the most human thing of all.